Okay, we have a total of 71 in the meeting.
All right. Okay, it is now 1 o'clock and I would like to, and as I know, we still have people trickling in. I would like to thank everyone for attending today. My name's Laura Gilpatrick, Chair of the Democratic Party of Oregon's 4th Congressional District. And again, thank you everyone for taking time out of your Sunday afternoon to attend our forum. Before we begin, I would like to recognize and thank Congressman Peter DeFazio for serving as our congressman for the past 35 years. It goes without saying, he will be missed and is leaving a big pair of shoes to fill. I also would like to thank the Democratic Party of Lane County for letting us use their Zoom account for this forum, as well as thank all the counties in the congressional district for submitting questions. And I also would like to thank the candidates for taking time out of their schedules to attend this forum. And I would like to introduce the candidates who are attending. But before I do, I would like to note that unfortunately, Val Hoyle came down with laryngitis and is unable to attend the forum. She did ask, and we agreed to have Dan Rayfield speak on her behalf for an introduction, in the introduction section. So going in alphabetical order, we have Sammy Al-Abdraba, Doyle Canning, Andrew Colick, Jake Matthews, John Selker, and G. Tommy Smith. And I'm going to turn it over to Jaden now, who's going to go over what to expect and forum procedures.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. This forum will be 2 hours in total. The order of speaking will begin alphabetically by last name for the introductions, and then we'll rotate for each question, giving each candidate an opportunity to speak first. The first 3 questions, including the one answered in the candidate's introduction, were offered to them ahead of time. The remaining questions were fielded from the counties of CD4 and were not shared with anyone before this forum. The amount of time allowed to respond will be announced along with each question before the candidates begin answering. We request that attendees remain muted throughout the forum and please keep use of the chat to a minimum. After all our forum questions have been answered, we will conclude this event with the candidates' closing statements. The final order for the closing statements will be in reverse order to the introductions. And with that, our candidates will begin offering their intro statements while answering our first question. What qualities and skills would make you the best candidates to represent Congressional District 4? Candidates, you have 3 minutes each, and let us begin with Sammy, followed by Doyle, and then the representative for Val.
You'll just give me a second to spotlight both the timer and the speaker. I will do so. And there is going to be a 30-second warning and then a 15-second warning. You'll get a chime on your 15-second warning and we'll let you finish your last sentence. So, and Sammy is up. Sammy, let me spotlight you.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa. Before I get started, is it possible to forego my chime as long as you say how many minutes I have before the question, just to make sure the audience will be able to hear me?
I'll turn the chime off for you. Just give me a moment to do that because I just learned how to do that.
Beautiful.
Okay, so Sammy, are you ready?
I am.
Okay.
Fired up and ready to go. Good afternoon. I am Dr. Sammy Al-Abdraba, and it is a pleasure to be here with you all today. I'm running to be Oregon's District 4 representative because there's a lot of work to do and to be done. And I have a good track record pushing for policy, funding, and results. in my local Oregon communities. My leadership skills helped me as a member of the Corvallis Sustainability Coalition Steering Committee, where we added solar energy to our schools, local income housing, government buildings, and nonprofits. As the board chair of Corvallis School District, I worked with the board and superintendents to pass resolutions regarding universal health care and its impact on education, and passed policies protecting students. My background in engineering and emergency management helped me think through complex problems related to infrastructure, safety, energy, and water systems. While my education and professional background have prepared me for a number of challenges that we face in our communities, the skills that will help me the most in Congress are my abilities to listen, to collaborate, and to focus. That said, what makes me the best candidates are those qualities that are often described by my colleagues, friends, families, and acquaintances. I'm compassionate. I love to help anyone in need, whether it is 2 in the afternoon or 3 in the morning. I have integrity. If I say I'm going to do it, I'm going to do something, I do it. I'm kind and persistent. I focus on what needs to get done and keep going until it is done. And I'm genuinely kind person throughout this process. I truly care about all of our district's constituents, from the business owners of quirky shops in Lincoln City, to the farmers in Roseburg, to parents of the kids in Linus Pauling Middle School in Corvallis. We live in a unique, diverse, wonderful place, and it would be my honor to carry our voices to Washington, D.C. And I'm ready for the hard work that needs to be done there. There's work to get done regarding the impacts of climate change, access to the ballots, ending homelessness, addressing income equality. And that's where I say, I love Oregon. I love our districts. I'm happy to talk to anyone about any questions you have, share my background, endorsements, and the platform and the commitment to fight for all of you and your needs.
Well done.
Thank you so much.
Great.
My name is Sami, and I'm looking forward for the conversation.
Great. Next, we'll have Doyle.
So just Doyle, just give me a second to manage the views. I am going to remove that pin, and I'm going to find Doyle in my view. Let me unpin this.
I'm right here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, there you go. I'm just learning how to do this, Doyle. So let me pin you.
No problem.
And then let me. There we go. Okay, I need to pin this and I need to pin Doyle. And then let me find.
I don't know
There you are. Forgive me for being a little bit slow, and I will put 3 minutes on the clock for you. Doyle, you ready to go?
I'm ready. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Doyle. There you go.
All right. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you for having me here today and for putting on this special forum. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with Democrats from throughout our new congressional district about why I am the best candidate to represent us in 2022 and beyond. And that is because I am unbought by big corporations, and I am unafraid to take the challenges of climate change, affordable housing, racial injustice, and poverty head on, just as I have for the past 2 decades. For 20 years, I've worked as a progressive policy strategist facing off with Wall Street banks, big polluters, billionaires, and the politicians that they pay for. And I'm under no illusions that powerful interests in Washington will give up without a fight, or that we have any time to drag our feet when it comes to the climate crisis. My record of progressive leadership is consistent, and that is the kind of leadership we need and we deserve in Congress now. I'm here today because I learned what injustice looked like when I was very young, before I blew out the candles on my 7th birthday cake, when my father got too violent in our home and the families next door would take care of me and keep me safe. If the police came, they would make excuses and never intervene or arrest my abuser. This experience imprinted on me at a very tender age that there are two systems of justice in our country, one for the powerful and one for the rest of us. And that's what made me a community organizer, eventually sent me to law school, and why I got involved in politics. Because I know that this unequal system has created multiple crises in our country, and that politics as usual won't deliver the solutions we need now. You see, when a fossil fuel company wants to bulldoze Southern Oregon to build their pipeline, or billionaires squeeze their workers while paying zero in taxes, or a Republican legislator pushes laws to criminalize abortion care, as Democrats, we should organize and we should fight back, but we shouldn't be surprised. This is, after all, what fossil fuel companies and billionaires and Republicans do. What we should be shocked by and what we should be outraged by is when politicians let them get away with it. The climate emergency, Trump's attacks on our democracy, poverty, the housing crisis in our community, threats to reproductive health, decades of racial injustice, all are too urgent for us to continue to wait for politicians who have shown us that they will side with the powerful while taking their money. That's why I'm running for Congress, because we deserve a Democrat who is unbought, unafraid, and has the consistency and moral clarity to lead for our country now. I will never do the bidding of billionaires or the fossil fuel industry. I will never give up on the promise of progressive change through people-powered politics. I always have been, always will be in this for you, for us, and for Oregon's future. Thank you so much, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Doyle. And now next we have Dan Rayfield, who is offering an introduction in Val Hoyle's stead.
Thank you, everybody, for having me. This is a little bit last minute. Normally, I would be at a polka band practice right now, so I do apologize. But I've known Val Hoyle ever since I've served in the legislature since 2014. And so she called me to, actually, she didn't call me, her staff person called me to read this statement on behalf of why she's running it and why I'm supporting her. I want to thank the hardworking party leaders of the 4th Congressional District for holding this forum today. I was looking forward to the opportunity to share my vision and my priorities to answer your questions. Unfortunately, I have come down with a bad case of laryngitis from getting over a cold and having lost my voice. I've been traveling this weekend and speaking and had a speaking engagement yesterday morning where I was already having difficulty. I'd hoped that some rest, hot tea, and soup would get me back on track and allow me to participate in today's forum. But it only got worse this morning, and now I can barely talk. My doctor and her strong advice was not to talk for a few days to avoid further damage to my vocal cords. Those of you who know me will understand how difficult it is for me to be unable to talk. This will be a real challenge. And as someone who worked with her, I can vouch for that. As a former chair of the DPLC, I know how vital your work is. You are all the backbone of the Democratic Party here and the horsepower that will ensure that we don't lose this seat to Alex Skarlatos in November. Together, we've knocked on hundreds of thousands of doors over the last 20 years, returned Democrats to the majority in the legislature, and passed major progressive priorities for our working families, our schools, and our climate. You've been there for me when I was in the legislature representing West Eugene and Junction City, and when I ran for labor commissioner, and I don't forget that, which makes it all the more difficult for me to be unable to speak with you today. I am honored to be supported by our Congressman Peter DeFazio, by Senators Merkley and Wyden, dozens of elected officials from across the district, and so many progressive groups, including Planned Parenthood, Oregon Working Families Party, Emily's List, and every single union that is endorsed in this race. Those of you who have worked alongside me over the past 2 decades know that why I've earned this broad support, because I've done the work here in the community since before I was in elected office. I'm effective and a strong fighter, and I always pick up the phone. I'm there when you need me, and I won't change, and that won't change when I'm serving in Congress. I am very sorry to miss this important forum, and I appreciate your understanding and look forward to being able to connect with you soon. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me directly. Val Hoyle. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dan.
And Adam in the back is clapping. So.
And up next, we have Andrew Kalek, followed by Jake Matthews and John Selker.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the 6 county Democratic committees and the Democratic Party of Oregon for hosting today. Thank you to my fellow candidates. It is a challenge, to say the least, to run for office, and I'm privileged to be on the stage with all of you. And thank you, most importantly, to those of you tuning in to this once-in-a-generation election in our corner of the state. It really is an opportunity for us to take stock of where we've been, where we are, and where we want to go as a community and as a country. My name is Andrew Kalek. I'm the son of public school teachers, a father of 3, and a former civil rights lawyer at the ACLU. I'm running to bring an independent mind and a new generation of leadership to DC, because the truth is that the status quo is not working for far too many Oregonians. My spouse and I came back to Oregon to raise our kids in the community where we have deep ties. But the truth is that there are many parents and grandparents who I speak to across this district who see their kids and their grandkids leave Oregon and they don't come back. They don't come back not because they don't love Oregon, but because they're worried about the state of our public schools. They're worried about whether they can afford a home. They're worried about whether they can get a family wage job. And of course, they're worried about the effects of climate on our quality of life. We need someone who has a lifetime of building coalitions that can tackle difficult problems and that can do so in a way that builds opportunity for everyone. I've done that at the ACLU. I've done that in government, and I've done that in global business at Airbnb. I'm also a millennial, and as a millennial, I've faced many of the challenges that are common to my generation and those younger than me. I graduated from law school with 6-figure student debt. As a result of that, I couldn't afford to purchase a home of my own until my late 30s. As a father, our family gets a childcare bill that runs in the thousands of dollars on the first of every month. And we are among the most privileged millennials you will find. We are able to pay those bills. But of course, the truth is most people cannot. And we need the perspective of younger people in Congress. We need the perspective of parents who have gone through what so many parents and I know grandparents have gone through during this pandemic, because you can bet that we leaned on our parents more than ever before. It's a missing voice, and we need that. Lastly, my generation has grown up in an era in which politics have become increasingly partisan, increasingly polarized, and increasingly poisonous. When politicians get credit for feeding blue meat or red meat to their withstanding. And the hardest thing to do in politics today is not hammer away at the opposition party, important as that is sometimes. It's to speak up against your political bubble and exercise independent leadership on behalf of the people, not the powerful. I've done that in this campaign. I'll do it as a member of Congress, and I'd be honored by your vote. Thanks so much.
Great, thank you. And now we have Jake.
Thank you. I ask your forgiveness for keeping my camera off for the beginning of our discussion today. I'd like to be judged by the content of my ideas instead of the color of my skin, my age, or anything else. Perhaps we can turn it on a little bit later. Let me race through the worst part of this, which is me telling you about my accomplishments. I am a pilot, I'm a sailor, and I'm a hunter. I got into these things because I didn't see minorities in them, so I wanted to see why. I have a bachelor's in macroeconomics, a bachelor's in government, and I minored in US history, and I've worked or volunteered for the John Kerry for President campaign, Hillary, Obama, Deval Patrick for governor, Member of Parliament Celia Barlow, and Mayor Livingston, both in London. I worked in Hollywood for about a decade. I had my own TV show on CBS called Wisdom of the Crowd with over 20 million viewers, and I was very popular for a time with white women over 65. That was our main demographic. And among several other shows and about a dozen commercials over the US, Mexico, China, Korea, and Vietnam. I wrote and produced a film in support of LGBTQ rights after the Pulse nightclub shooting. And currently I'm working to free 4 children who are set for execution by the Taliban, the youngest of which was shot in the legs 3 times as a baby and now represents the resistance there. I've been working with the State Department, 3 congressmen, and refugees on this issue. DeFazio's office suggested my best bet was human smuggling, saying that the State Department doesn't talk to Congress, but we'll get back to that. Guys, the human life expectancy in America is about 76 years old. Now, some of you may be doing the math on this for how much time you have left, and that's understandable. Mind you, that's the average. My brother passed away a few years ago, so not everyone is so fortunate. I mention life expectancy because, simply put, we don't have the time to do this, guys. We don't have the time for this sort of back and forth between politicians and parties that have largely abandoned us. We need to expect more from our Congress and our politicians, and there's so much more they can do that they choose not to. What I'm going to build in our district is a green city of the future that has something called subscription living. Now, I know most of these words may have already scared you off, and I totally get it, but if you'll just bear with me, it's the best solution we can have for exacting change and promoting human happiness. It's the most efficient way to address climate change, drugs, rape, murder, homelessness, a rigged economy, gun violence, inequality, everything. And it's an investment. It's not a purchase where the district makes money off of it, whether one chooses to live in it or not. There is already, this is already being done around the world. Saudi Arabia is about 5 years into this. They have figured out the economics of it, the viability, the feasibility. Latin America is doing well with it on a large scale. And right here in America, Arizona has already gotten started. Oregon will not be left out of this race. Our per capita right now, which is the average salary that a person makes in our district, is $24,000. That is the poorest in the state. If you think it doesn't affect you, 1 out of 5 doctors are quitting the profession because salaries are not comparable to the economy. Building this city will increase our per capita to 100,000 by 2030. There's more information on this on my website, whynotoregon.com, which is the question we should be asking. Why not us? We have so much potential here. You have so much potential, and it's going unrealized because Congress is a design scam, and we have purposefully rigged the economy against us. It's time for monumental change, not incremental, guys. Monumental change. Susan, it is not a gated community, I promise. That's my time. Thank you.
All right, and thank you. And next we have John, followed by Tommy Smith.
Hey, folks. I want to talk about connection, commitment, and a fresh vision. So what connection to Oregonians did I gain by working with farmers from Dundee to Roseburg, by solving real problems in rivers and aquifers from the Alsea to the John Day, by teaching engineering at OSU for 31 years, and by building a company based on technology I developed and making it right here in Oregon? What connection does it make to have been an ambassador for our region? I brought people from Africa, Asia, Europe, and South America to Oregon, and I myself have worked in 22 countries. I'm deeply connected to our region as an educator, an entrepreneur, an activist, an ambassador, and a parent with and finally an extension agent. I got Oregon dirt under my nails 40 years ago, and I love it. But here's the key. I'm absolutely optimistic about our future and have a fresh vision to make our future brighter. I'm just wondering, is anyone else seeing my picture? Because I'm not seeing my picture in the screen, but anyway, it's fine. So my fresh vision to make our future brighter, I will bring positive change to the 4th District. A few high points. One thing is climate change. Solar and wind are the least expensive sources of energy right now. Working with the federal level, we can build a carbon-free economy that won't cost our taxpayers a penny. How? Let me share some specific actions. First off, we'll follow California's example, requiring utilities to achieve targets. Over half of California's energy is carbon-free right now, and their costs at the same time followed exactly along national trends. In DC last week, I worked with leadership on the national power distribution system. By securing right-of-ways, we can save ratepayers $300 billion a year. The model is right in our backyard. The construction of the Oregon, Washington, California electrical connection pays for itself every 4 months. I don't know if you knew that, it's really amazing. And medical care. Caring for my wife, I discovered the lobbyist clause, requiring companies to charge more than the federally negotiated rates. The same item that I bought on eBay or Amazon for $340 cost our insurer $3,000. Let me share an immediate action. Eliminate this rule and we will save taxpayers $125 billion a year. And we have a lot more opportunities. On education, I've been a teacher for over 40 years. We need to make changes. First, all-day preschool free. Second, community colleges free. Third, repay college loans for people who go into service, teachers, nurses, and social workers. And I think we have to recognize the impact of the internet and its potential. And we have to make classrooms a living place where we learn to think and write and not so much focusing on the facts. My experience is getting things done in Oregon and around the world. I want to bring problem solving back to our government. Together, we will set the 4th District up for a bright future by halting climate change, providing great education, great medical care, and great jobs. So I'm really pleased to be here, and thanks so much for the time and all of you guys putting this together. It's a fabulous idea, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you, John. And now we have Tommy.
All right, saving the best for last. All right. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Val, if you're watching, I hope you get better. As you can see, I took Doyle's artistic view in the background. My name is G. Tommy Smith. Please call me Tommy. I was raised pretty much here in the Valley. Graduated Willamette High School. 2 weeks later, I joined the Navy, where I was an air traffic controller. After I got out of the Navy, I could have lived anywhere, and I decided to move back home because, well, frankly, in my world travels and traveling around this country, I haven't found a place quite like here. And that's why I have such a passion for this place. And that's why I want to serve. After graduating college, I was an entrepreneur where I bought into a failing business, turned it around to a successful, profitable business. And within 3 months, expanded to 3 stores with up to 15 employees. One of the things that I'm definitely proud of, that anybody who knows me knows, that I care and I'm passionate in helping people, not only growing personally, but professionally. In everything I've ever done, I've always been put in a position of trust. And I like to earn your trust as your representative for the great state of Oregon. I believe there's a lot of problems going on in our state and in our country. I would like to help the unhoused and mental health crisis, and us veterans get better treatment in our care. Reality is that nothing's getting done in Washington. We have this clan mentality going on. It's all about me, 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 me. What I think I know, what I think I should be, what I think America should be moving forward. And what we need more of is really kindness. We need to be listening to one another. Even if the other side is saying stuff that we don't necessarily agree to, people want to be heard. And that's what I want to do. I want to go into our communities. I want to listen to the natives of our district and the problems that are going on with them. I need to listen to what's going on out there in the classrooms and everything else like that, and how we can improve those situations. I like to say, but it's not really until you get into those situations and you get your hands dirty, you find out what is really going on. And I just thank you so much for having me here today. I am definitely a faith-driven person, and I thank the good Lord for having me here. And I just put my blessings on him, from him to all of you. Thank you so much. My name is Tommy.
Thank you, Tommy. And now Laura will be asking this next question.
Okay. All right. Thank you for the introductions. And now we're going to get into some questions. This next question, the time is 1 minute, and we will start with Doyle Canning. And so the first question is, what particular needs of CD4 are important to address as our representative?
Okay, thank you. We need a leader who is unbought and unafraid to ensure that everyone here in Oregon has a safe place to call home, quality healthcare in every community, and the security of a stable climate future we can all look forward to. So many families want to put down roots right here, right now, but simply can't because of the ways that our economy is stacked in favor of billionaires and big corporations. Just last week, I was in Coos Bay talking with Ashley, and she shared that she'll soon be evicted from her home because it's being flipped into a commercial Airbnb. Ashley isn't alone. The struggle to find affordable housing on the coast, in Eugene and in Corvallis, is made worse by Wall Street investors getting into the landlord business. I'm the only one in this race that has created a plan for affordable housing that will, as the Homes for All Act. We can't wait for leadership for affordable housing for Oregon. That's why I'm running. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Andrew, again, 1 minute. What particular needs of CD4 are important to address as our representative?
Yeah, thank you. The 4th district, obviously an incredible place, not only because it's home, but because it's unusual in American politics today. It's not a deep blue district in an urban center. It's not a deep red district in rural America. It is a combination of urban and rural, agricultural and industrial, coastal communities and mountain hamlets. And as Democrats, I think that should excite us, because what you truly need to enact sustained progressive change in America is not a coalition that's 50% plus one. You need a bigger coalition that unites working class people across many different places. And so that's why the 4th can lead us to that promised land. I think there are some really important issues here: continued investment in infrastructure and transportation. Peter DeFazio has been great on that. We need to continue that legacy. Building a diverse economy that provides family wage jobs, and not just in Eugene and Corvallis, but in every community. And tackling the cost of living crisis, from housing to prescription drugs. I've got plenty of ideas for this on my website at andrewkallick.com. So check it out. Thanks.
Right, thank you. And Jake, 1 minute. What particular needs of CD4 are important to address as our representative?
Thank you. It's the economics of our district. The per capita, that's all it is. Every other decision can be made from there, but right now we are the poorest district in the state. The per capita is at $24,000. It was less than $17,000 34 years ago. It is not moving in step with the economy. If you made 7% on your stock investments over the last year, it's all gone from inflation. Ours is the only campaign not asking anybody for a single dollar, because with gas prices at $5, close to $6, we don't want your money. We'd rather just you spread the word. People don't have the financial freedom to make decisions and improve their lives in our district. Happiness and wealth is not a zero-sum game. People are struggling between bills, unable to make home improvements because they're financially strapped. And there is industry out there that we can bring to Oregon, but it keeps skipping our state. And my goal is to bring it to our state.
Thank you, Jake. John Selker, in 1 minute, what particular needs of CD4 are important to address as our representative?
It's been really great traveling around and hearing people's stories. And the key thing that comes back every time is housing and homelessness. And there are 2 main features which I want to talk about at the regional level. First one is that 70% of homeless are suffering from drug addiction, mental health challenges, and mental disability. The cost of not dealing with drug addiction is disastrous for individuals, but it's also a disaster for the community. We need to move from indignation to treating homeless with dignity and providing the care they require. The second thing is the cost of construction and cost of housing. And basically, Oregon has the 2nd lowest vacancy rate in the nation. And this is causing unsustainable inflation, especially at the bottom end of the market. And we simply have to have more housing. Universal access to medical care and no more medical bankruptcy. This has to be a fundamental feature. We're seeing many of those out on the streets have been bankrupted by their medical needs. And finally, tsunami preparation. Our coastal communities are largely wood frame structured, built on floodplains. We urgently need to place safe structures in these downtown areas.
Okay, all right, thank you. And Tommy, 1 minute, what particular needs of CD4 are important to address as our representative?
Well, I just think it's important to represent all the voices of CD4, from the staunch liberal to the most conservative of us out there. We all have different ways of ideas on how to get things done, but we all have to come to a fundamental understanding that we're all Americans, we're all Oregonians here. And we all want the basic things, safe security for our homes, nice paying jobs, and a great place to live. But some of the things that we have to work on, it's definitely non-house area, the mental health crisis that's going on. Our veterans need help. The natives in our district definitely need help. All these things we need to be focused on. And it's just not one thing. But once again, there's not a whole lot being done over back east. And we need someone who can go back there and work with them and talk with people and get things done. And this is just not happening. And I believe I'm the only candidate can do that. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. And Sammy, what particular needs of CD4 are important to address as our representative? And you have 1 minute.
Laura, the most critical issue that needs to be addressed for our district is the impact of climate change. We'll discuss that in a bit, so I'll move on to two more crucial issues for our communities: healthcare and education. Our dysfunctional system of private hospitals and insurers left us poorly equipped for the global pandemic. I am strongly of support of Medicare for all. As a board chair for the Corvallis School District, I passed a resolution that demands Congress for an Oregon legislator to provide a universal form of healthcare. Part of the reason that healthcare is so important is because of the impact it has on our students. As an educator, school board member, and chair, I care about being as inclusive as possible. I have witnessed the growth, development of our students with different needs, talents, backgrounds. I have been floored by the teachers' dedication, and I'll be supporting them for better pay, reasonable class sizes, invest in infrastructure, and full funding of special education. So many issues. You will know whatever the issue is, I'll be at the front lines fighting for you, just like as I have done. Thank you.
Thank you, Sammy. And Jaden, I'm turning the next question over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, so our third question is the most verbose of the ones we will be asking today. So I'm glad I will be able to paste this in the chat so I won't have to ask the entire thing every single time. And thankfully, we've already given all these candidates this question, so I'm sure they have it in mind. So with that, I will read. Wildfires are causing destruction of forest ecologies, animal life, and personal property. There is a lot of talk about preventing wildfires by clearing trees and underbrush, as well as other similar methods. Do you consider it possible to prevent these massive fires in the face of climate change and protracted drought? What methods do you support, and why do you believe that these methods would balance wildfire prevention and forest protection? What do you propose is the best resolution to our ecological and economic model going forward? And how will you reflect that in your efforts in Congress? And this question gives each candidate 2 minutes. And so we will begin with Andrew.
Thank you very much. On wildfires, these have been with us forever, of course. It's part of a natural forest ecology, and yet it's obvious to any of us who've lived in Oregon that climate change has made them a much graver threat, both to us as humans, but also to the broader ecology. We can't eliminate the threat completely, but we can mitigate it through smart practices that have borne the test of time. It was way back in 1911 when the Forest Service, I think the first director of the Forest Service, decided that we would try to put out every fire of every kind all the time. And we know now that that is not what is the scientifically basis, the scientific basis for good fire management. Instead, groups from the Forest Service to the UN have recognized that it's actually indigenous practices like clearing of small brush through contained fires that can actually be practical and a responsible way to mitigate the threat of broader forest fires while also supporting a thriving ecosystem. So I think as a member of Congress, what's important to do is continue to boost funding for partnerships between tribal nations and the Forest Service and others to maintain an appropriate ecology. Now, I think the broader question here is one about climate and the economy. And I was talking to somebody about this at the Eugene Farmers Market yesterday, and she asked me, do I support climate or do I support jobs for people? And I said, well, I think we have to support both. And indeed, climate change is a threat to our economy. It's a threat to our national security. We need to figure out a way to take concerted action that will benefit both the ecology and the economy. And so under my leadership, every bill will be a climate bill, whether it's the farm bill, the defense bill, a housing bill, or a transportation bill. It's the through line that connects all issues. And I think we need leaders in DC who understand that and are willing to act collectively to make real change. So thanks.
All right, and now we have Jake followed by John.
Thank you. The vast majority of people all around the world live in cities. And it's because of this that the battle for climate change can most effectively and efficiently be fought in how we design cities. Now, this will pay dividends in the fight for climate change, whether you live in that city or not. It's like how pollution in Bombay, India actually does affect us here in Oregon. So green cities of the future, like the ones that are being constructed right now in Arizona, Latin America, and Saudi Arabia, they have a zero carbon footprint, yet they house hundreds of thousands of people who spend their lives there. So these people are now emitting zero carbon footprint. Now, we can build one here in our district, and that'll be a beacon for the rest of the world to see how well people can live with no negative effects on the climate. And people can still live in their homes whether they choose to live in a subscription living city or not. But the most efficient way to battle this is to redesign how a city is being made. And it's already happening right now. And I don't think Oregon can afford to stay out of this race.
Oh, okay. And so it sounds like you are wrapping up. We have John next.
Hi, this is one of those classic areas where society and ecosystems are complicated. And it's another area where there's been a whole lot of talk and very little insight, unfortunately. I work closely with Forest Service scientists and OSU foresters. The bulk of the 4th District's forests are considered wet climate Douglas fir. According to the forest experts, it's a myth that these coastal forests will be protected by thinning. In the small part of our district considered to be dry forests, there would be advantages of thinning and controlled burning. And we should be putting people in those forests to do this work from today. We need to keep in mind at the same time that 80% of the Forest Service land in the 4th District is now classified as old growth and can't be thinned. A key reality is that for historical reasons, the 4th District has a large fraction of the forests under the Bureau of Land Management, not the Forest Service. And by Supreme Court finding, the Bureau of Land Management is not subject to the Forest Practices Act. And so it's only restricted by the Endangered Species Act and then the Oregon Forest Practices. So we need to have the BLM to develop a forward-looking plan rather than falling back on generic land use policies. And this work is long overdue. Now, what can we do about forest fires? First, people need to prepare their homes to be fire safe. Closed gutters, non-flammable roofing, closed areas under the decks, removal of close shrubs and fuels, and setbacks from forests. We need to help people make these preparations. Our brave firefighters cannot save the day if proper preparations have not been made. Now, forest fires have been part of the Oregon ecology since time immemorial. Yet with climate change, extreme events that lead to forest fires have become more common. At the base, we need to move with all possible energy to reverse climate change. Today, we need to make sure that our structures are made safe. We can and do both of these. We can and will do both of these things. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, John. And the last 3 speakers, we have Tommy, Sammy, and Doyle. Tommy, when you're ready.
Hi. Well, this is definitely a burning question on a lot of people's minds, isn't it? The weather outside is getting warmer, and I was just thinking to myself the other day was, oh, great, we're going to have smoke in here and, choke us out not too long, and that stinks. We need to be doing stuff like controlled burning. We need to have a carbon tax in place. We need to ban single-use plastics. One of the biggest wastes that no one talks about is really, literally our front yards. How much do we waste on water and resources just to have a flat green grass in our front yards when we could have native plants and species and gardens to help one another with? All these things we can do, and we need to get behind one another as a society and start going and doing all this together. Like how we did back in World War II to fight Nazis and all that stuff. We need to do the same thing when it comes to climate change. We all need to band together. We need a strong leader that talks to people about common sense stuff. One of the biggest things that people don't talk about is no one knows what they can and cannot recycle. It's too complicated. No one knows, okay, well, I got this thing, I can put it in my recycle bin or not. We need to simplify that. We need to actually have a recycling program that is expanded to multiple things that we can actually put in our recycle bins and everything else like that. It's ridiculous. And as your leader, as your voice, I hope to bring about that change. Let's talk about things like this. How can we expand our uses? How can we make our own lives or our own, what we do on a daily basis better? How can we expand that to federal programs? How can we get more funding in to make things better? Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Tommy. And next we have Sammy.
Jaden, Oregonians are already experiencing the effects of unchecked carbon pollution and climate change, from continuing droughts to devastating wildfires that displace so many each year. And we need immediate action to reduce emissions and protect Oregonians from the consequences of this unfolding disaster. In Washington, D.C., I will continue to advocate for the same meaningful climate policies that I introduced in our local communities: sustainable and profitable solar panels and energy efficient buildings that lower the impact of our on our environment. However, that's not enough to only focus on preventing climate change. We must also mitigate wildfires and focus on how we respond when they occur, because they will occur. We have a responsibility for prevention, and I think the best approach is to increase funding of prescribed burning, selective logging, and removal of dead trees and vegetation in areas and high risk of wildfires. And John mentioned really good nuances there that I would lean on experts like that. We also have a responsibility to use sound emergency management and response methods to save as many lives as possible. These methods include increasing community situational awareness during evacuations and adopting the recommendations that I proposed in my applied dissertation research on this very subject. The best approach going forward is to pass state and federal legislation that slows down the effects of climate change and provides infrastructure to manage the negative impacts of droughts and wildfires. We also need to be sure that we are approving policy and infrastructure that prepares us for the changes in human migration from other areas as folks are displaced from these natural disasters. Whether it's the Green New Deal or similar legislation that accomplishes the goals of prevention, response, infrastructure, it is needed, and it is needed now, and I'll be fighting for it.
Thank you, Sammy. And our last speaker for this question is Doyle.
Thank you, Jaden. On Labor Day in 2020, I got a call from my neighbor, Tim, who's a career wildland firefighter, and we've worked together on federal fire policy in Congress and at the Forest Service. He called me and he said, Doyle, this is the worst fire weather I've ever seen. The crews are spread too thin, and if this wind doesn't shift, that fire is coming for Eugene. Thankfully, the wind did shift and the valley floor was spared, but it was too late for towns like Blue River, the 2,500 Oregonians who lost their homes, the over 1,400 who remained in motels and shelters 9 months after the fire with nowhere to go because of the housing shortage. Raging wildfires that burn down entire towns and create refugees in our own communities. This situation is a result of failed policy and choices made by politicians who are lobbied by the powerful to look the other way. Heat and drought created that firestorm weather, which was accelerated by fossil fuel pollution that has damaged our climate. Utilities have not been forced to bury their power lines despite knowing one spark can burn down a town. Decades of heavy industrial logging replanted with plantations create hillsides that go up like matchsticks. It's poor planning, shortcuts, cut and run to make their millions, leaving rural Oregon communities to suffer the cost and to pay with our lives. In Congress, I will fight for federal investments in proven fire preparedness and safety, bringing good federal jobs to rural Oregon, to create wildfire buffers around vulnerable communities, to harden and fireproof homes, to reduce the risk from utility lines. And all of this creates good paying jobs. We have to ensure that our forests are well managed for fire. And that means leaving the big trees that burn slowly, leaving them standing. We can also adopt the proven methods of the Native American tribes of the Northwest, prescribe burns in the wetter seasons that safely reduce fuels. And ultimately, we must tackle the root causes of climate change, fossil fuel pollution, before it's too late. Thank you.
Thank you, Doyle. And Laura?
All right, thank you. All right, so moving on to the next question is 1 minute. And the first, and Jake will be answering this first. There's a housing crisis, not only in Oregon, but throughout the entire country. How will you respond to the housing crisis in the 4th Congressional District?
Subscription Living Cities specifically tackles the housing crisis. What it does is it takes your whole holistic being into account. So I forgot who mentioned it earlier. I believe it was John. When we're trying to help homelessness, the issue is not just to give them a home, it's that they have deep-seated biological issues that we can help them with. Most rehab fails because rehab is spans about 21 days, but we have overwhelming evidence that the person can be rehabilitated if they spend 6 to 9 months there. What a subscription living green city of the future does is it addresses who you are as a complete holistic person, and it'll make sure that you can afford housing within the city with enough psychological help to help you get through it. Right now, we have the majority of young people who can't afford to buy a house because they don't have the income that can compete with this market right now. But this will be available with this city.
Thank you, Jake. And John, 1 minute. How would you respond to the housing crisis in the 4th CD?
Really great question. And this is one of the most pressing questions that I mentioned earlier. If you look at the cost of constructing a classic 2-bedroom apartment, and you can look online, it's about $125,000 to $150,000. And if you look at the price in Oregon for the land that sits under that apartment, it's about the same, putting the price near $300,000. Typical payments, historically speaking, you think about 1% per month. That's $3,000 a month. And so the point is that even building simple apartments won't solve it on its own. We actually have to have public-private partnerships. We have to look at our land base and identify places where we can competitively bid low-cost housing options. And so just looking at the numbers, we see that simply asking builders to build more things is not going to solve the problem. And we certainly shouldn't have the government be the major landlord in this business. What we have to do actually is recognize to work on this together. And that's where the public and the private come together and solve this problem.
Thank you. And Tommy, 1 minute.
You know, it wasn't that long ago that I had it off of a Barger here in Eugene. I had a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment near Winco. It cost me about $700 to $800 a month in rent there. When I moved back to the area, I went to that same place to see if I can get an apartment, same thing. And the exact same apartment was $1,400 a month. It's outrageous. It takes 2 people to live anywhere anymore. I had to buy a condo because I couldn't afford rent. It's ridiculous. You know, one of the problems that we have here is we have restriction of land. You know, with the 2 rivers, with the Willamette and McKenzie, it's hard for us to build suitable housing for everywhere. So what can we do about this? Well, what limited land that we can have, instead of just doing it for just low income people, have it based off a percentage of someone's income so anybody can get in there and get better housing. There's 1,000 things that we can do on this. Unfortunately, I don't have enough time to speak on it, but we can get there. Thank you.
Thank you. And Sammy.
Thank you, Laura. Houselessness, rent inflation, social services, especially with working families with children, and income inequality, those are interconnected issues. As the price of housing has skyrocketed in our district and state, too many Oregonians have found themselves on their own and in their own personal housing crisis. It is time for federal government to end the moratorium on the construction of new public housing to address this crisis. We must increase federal support for public and nonprofit community agencies and re-examine and invest in rental assistance for all those who need it. And I've done really good work in Corvallis School District, so not for the district only, but for the whole Benton County region, and in terms of partnerships, assessing and understanding the environment. And McKinney-Vento Act has been really good step. We need to push it further. It's not enough. Everyone deserves shelter from the elements. And I would say you will find someone in me who really understands it. I pay rent. I understand. I have friends who have been really moved from their housing and housing security. They had to choose how to live based on the crisis we're navigating. We need to fight for it. Everyone deserves a shelter. And if I may ask, Laura, I think there's an echo every time I speak or someone is being unmuted. If we can check for that, that would be really appreciated. I'm not sure if it's only me or other people are noticing that too.
Okay, I'm not noticing an echo on my part.
I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not either.
No worries, then it might be from my device. Thanks.
Okay, all right, thank you, Sammy. Doyle.
Okay, thank you so much for this question. 3 years ago, I walked out of the grocery store in Eugene and I saw a young mother with a baby and a toddler in a stroller holding a sign saying she was fleeing domestic violence and she needed help. And as a survivor myself, I stopped in my tracks. And what began in that moment was a 3-year struggle to get that family rehoused in Eugene. She did everything right, went to every agency, but the list was just too long. And she lived in a van, in shelters with friends at the mission for 3 years. Eugene has the shameful distinction of having the most unhoused people per capita in the United States. I'm the only one in this race that has created a plan to end homelessness in America, which is now called the Homes for All Act, which will repeal the Faircloth Amendment. It's been introduced in Congress. This plan will build 12 million new public housing and privately owned permanently affordable rental units, driving down costs throughout the market. And this is the scale of the solutions we need. And that's why I'm running for Congress. Thank you.
Thank you, Doyle. And finally, Andrew, 1 minute.
Thanks very much. This has been a long time crisis in the making. Oregon has the third or fourth highest housing appreciation since 1992, and it's because we have the second fewest housing units per capita. We have to build more housing at every single level. And what that means is we have to take a tax code that right now benefits the wealthy and subsidizes luxury development, including, say, a Ritz-Carlton hotel in downtown Portland, and turn that on its head and make sure that taxpayer money goes to affordable housing. For instance, we have a voucher system in America, but we have wait lists that stretch for years, all while we're subsidizing luxury development. It's completely backwards. We turn that on its head, make sure that people have, low-income people have access to vouchers, make sure we bring down rents with additional building. And then last but not least, John mentioned this, I've written about the need to leverage our public land to get the cost of housing down. This is a column I wrote about it recently. I did work on this when I was working in government, and I think it's essential that we take advantage of these types of assets for the benefit of working people. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Jaden, it's over to you. Next question.
All right. Yeah, so we are going to begin this question with John and then Tommy. We have 1 minute, and I'm going to post it in the chat right now as I read it. The COVID crisis spotlighted weaknesses within our healthcare systems. Do you support single-payer healthcare? What other weaknesses do you see in our healthcare system, and how would you address them?
A minute should be plenty. Thanks very much for a really important question. And absolutely, COVID did point to all sorts of things, including not having taken seriously the fact that we knew there was such a thing coming. But having taken care of my wife during her health crisis, I learned a lot. And one thing I learned is that we're spending $125 billion a year for no reason at all, because the lobbyists have put a clause in our laws that has that happen. The drug crises are $500 billion a year more than they should be. Those alone would take care of massive amounts of the costs. But we have to work from the bottom up. The people who are not insured or are being burdened, like the Oregon Health Plan, with these insurance policies that have $10,000 deductibles and $100,000 caps, this is not adequate. And so we need to work from the bottom up, cover those people who cannot cover their own health care now, and end bankruptcy due to medical care. Getting sick is something that happens to you. It's not your fault. And we have to make that societally responsible, not falling on the individual.
Thank you. Tommy?
All right, thank you for the question. Well, there was a plan in place for in case something like COVID was come along, and it was just thrown away at a moment's notice with a certain regime change. But that's neither here nor there. We do need to have some kind of universal income. As someone of faith, I just cannot believe that we're one of only 2 countries in the whole entire world that doesn't give healthcare as a right. You shouldn't have to be rich to go in and get medical care. You break an arm, it's going to cost you thousands of dollars. It used to be years ago that the majority of homelessness was because of medical bills and everything else like that. It's absolutely shameful that we call ourselves a Christian country, but yet we're not willing to help our fellow man. It's absolutely absurd. And when I go into Congress, I am definitely going to be fighting for universal health care for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Tommy. And now we have Sammy followed by Doyle.
Jaden, I'll use this opportunity to say thank you for the question. Clear answer is yes. I'm the only elected official running in this race who's supporting a single payer. And I want to give that as a disclosure. Hey, whenever someone says I'm the only candidate, let's do our homework to make sure we're not eliminating another candidates who have done that work. So I would say I believe I am the one who's for single payer because of 3 important strengths: affordable, accessible, high quality. The problems with the system that we have: affordability, quality, and access. People are struggling with the prescription drugs. It's just not fair. 10 times the price, insulin, 10 times the price in Oregon compared to Canada. What else there is? Administrative costs. It's just ballooning into 30% and 35%. We can reduce it to 1.5 if we go toward a single payer system. I have been opposed by a candidate who thought I'm too political because I favor single payer, and he had a national focus and support, and we defeated him in Benton County. We'll defeat those people who think that your health and safety and wellness has a price on it. I will fight for a single payer because a human life is so important, and I'll be advocating for it in Congress no matter what. We've been opposed for it here in Oregon, and we succeeded, and we will succeed in Congress.
Thank you, Sammy. Doyle, followed by Andrew, and then Jake.
Thank you, Jaden. My mother suffered from a chronic condition, lupus, and when she lost her job, due in part to her chronic illness, she lost the insurance coverage that she needed, and she died within 2 years at the age of 50. I support Medicare for all because the cost of healthcare cost my mother her life. And I'm the only one in this race who has actively worked to push single-payer healthcare legislation forward, advising the nation's first and only successful campaign to win a universal healthcare law in the state of Vermont. I am with the 75% of Oregonians, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, who know that no one should have to ever go through what my family did. No one should have to put up a GoFundMe to get through cancer. And when I'm elected to Congress, I will be a champion for Medicare for all on day one. That's why I have the endorsement of every single payer and Medicare for all organization who is endorsed in this race. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you for the question. Incredibly important one, of course. I also support single payer healthcare. I'm endorsed by the Oregon Single Payer Advocates, but I also know there are lots of steps on the way to a Medicare for all system. For instance, we have a youth mental health crisis in Oregon. There's absolutely no reason why cost should be a barrier to kids accessing mental health care. And so we need to have mental health treatment, especially for our young people, as seen as preventive care under the Affordable Care Act. That way people can get it without copays or co-insurance. That can reduce a barrier. In addition, we need to make sure that people in rural America have access to prescription drugs. A lot of times people are waiting an hour, 2 hours to get a prescription drug. And then of course, they're paying a huge premium to what people pay in other countries. And why is that? Well, because the pharmaceutical industry has enormous power in Congress by subsidizing politicians. So we need to turn this again on its head, make sure Medicare can negotiate drug prices, drive down costs, and have better care for everyone in America.
Thank you. And Jake?
If the pandemic has taught us anything, it's that we need to decouple health insurance from employment. Losing a job should not mean the loss of a family's lifeline to healthcare. The Affordable Care Act was a good start at reform, but as Medicare and Social Security have demonstrated, we should not have to pay private for-profit insurers boatloads of money to get the insurance we need. Now, I have no illusions that that this will happen soon, but the road we're on now is unsustainable economically, politically, and socially. Eventually, we're going to have some version of Medicare for all, and the question is how much unnecessary cost and hardship we must bear before we do. I'd like to go through with a fine-tooth comb and figure out what Singapore and France are doing right with their healthcare, and we'll be adopting something similar to that.
Thank you. Over to Laura.
Okay, all right. The next question is for a minute, and we're going to start with Tommy. The CAHOOTS program in Eugene is being touted nationwide in dealing with mental health incidents and has been proven effective. Do you support redistribution of responsibility of our first responders? What other weaknesses do you see in our social safety response, and how would you address them?
Well, thank you so much for that question. Once again, I have really strong feelings about this. I have family members who suffer from mental illness, and whenever they get off their medication, it is definitely not a fun experience. A lot of times, some kind of police agency has to be called, and the police gets involved, and they're not suited for these type of situations. We need CAHOOTS. Is great for in Eugene, but it needs to be expanded. Some of my family members live outside of Eugene, and because they can't get out there, they can't get the help that they need. CAHOOTS and programs like CAHOOTS need to be spread throughout the whole district. So that way, if there is a mental health crisis is coming, that they have adequate care. A social worker shows up, not someone with a gun. You know, so many people get died or killed over this in this country every day because of the wrong people are handling the situation. Yes, I support CAHOOTS wholeheartedly with all my heart, and I will fight for its expansion throughout our whole district. Thank you.
Okay, and Sammy.
Thank you, Laura. My answer is yes. The CAHOOTS program is a phenomenal experience, and we need to support local communities and state agencies to invest in such programs. I'm really inspired by it. I believe it was used when I had to call the non-emergency number when I saw someone with non-immediate threatening behavior, a constituent, and I told them, would you be able to have a trauma informed? And I think this is a mental health, even though he made threats. And they were very equipped to respond to it. That happened just a few weeks ago. I believe we need to expand those practices, invest in more trauma-informed, culturally appropriate response. So people respond with a conversation, with this de-escalation. I believe that is an answer for so many of our crises that we see. And I'm really, really inspired by the CAHOOTS program. I will be championing it in Washington, D.C. and supporting local communities to develop their own programs. So it's really locally developed, federally supported and funded or subsidized. Really, really appreciate this question.
Thank you. And Doyle.
Yes, thank you so much. The CAHOOTS program is a very inspiring and proven model to provide unarmed crisis intervention and assistance on the streets. Now, there's been a flurry of interest in replicating CAHOOTS, and we've had visitors in Eugene from cities like Minneapolis, Los Angeles, Denver. All of those cities are studying what CAHOOTS is doing and has done and how it could be replicated in their much larger cities. So that's very exciting. Senator Wyden has also introduced a bill in the Senate, which has a companion bill in the House to replicate the model of CAHOOTS. So yes, I am a strong champion for CAHOOTS. It saves lives. It is also a step towards the kind of racial justice agenda and program that I will champion in Congress. Thank you so much for this question. It's an area where our community really can show the country a new way of leadership. Thank you.
And Andrew.
Thank you. I echo the chorus on cahoots, and thanks Senator Wyden for his leadership on this. Got significant funding through the American Recovery Plan for cahoots models across the country through Medicaid. And so I think that that is a good step. The question speaks to a larger question about how are we going to create community-oriented public safety and public health in America. And from the ACLU to the Portland Committee on Community Engaged Policing, this has been a core part of my experience as a civil rights attorney. And I think it's important to think about it holistically, because the cahoots program, great as it is one piece. You also need well-funded and well-trained law enforcement so that they can respond when they need to. And that is in certain circumstances and not others. And you also need social services in communities so that people can access them, not at the moment of crisis, but before then, so that we can root out problems before they start. So thanks.
Okay, thank you. And Jake?
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement here. We absolutely should support and expand on the cahoots program and the redistribution of responsibility of our first responders. Human biology professor Dr. Sapolsky at Stanford said that 90% of what we understand about biology has happened in the last 100 years, 50% in the last 10 years, and 25% in the last year alone. The number of things we don't fully understand yet about human consciousness and the neuroscientific health is large, and the responsibility of this should be taken off of our first responders and towards those who understands its intricacies better and how to respond to it more accurately.
Okay, thank you, Jake. And finally, John.
Like Tommy, I have family members who've actually been served by cahoots, and I am very thankful for that remarkable, creative, and treasured institution. That said, it's a Band-Aid. It's a Band-Aid that should be purchased. We all have our emergency kits, but our first and foremost responsibility as lawmakers is to deal with the underlying problem. And that is the people in the streets and the fact that we close down our support for mental health. So we have to invest in drug rehabilitation. And for example, a lot of people in the streets who are having these breakdowns have addictions to opioids. 70% of opioid addicts recover. The other 30% we are not treating, we're not taking care of them. So we have to put in the money for mental health care and for drug addiction. And of course, we need our first responders of all flavors, firemen, policemen, and definitely cahoots.
Okay, thank you, John. And Jaden?
All right. So we've cycled once all the way through with everyone getting to speak first. So we're going to start again with Sammy and then Doyle.
Jaden, I'm not sure if they can hear you.
Oops, thank you. Did y'all get the introduction part of who gets to speak first and stuff? Sorry about that.
I heard Sammy and Doyle.
Okay. So yeah, I'm reading the question now. Thank you. Sorry about that. The labor movement has come into a millennium renaissance with service workers at places like Starbucks and laborers like workers in Amazon organizing for the first time. How will you make it easier for young workers to organize?
Thank you, Jaden. I am a union member. I am a brother for my siblings, sisters, and brothers who are organizing, who want to organize. And I'm very proud of it. I learned about it and about the importance of it by seeing the impact of negotiating and having collective bargaining. I'm a card-holding member, and I've seen it in a private institution where if I would have organized, I would have been fired, and I tried it anyways. I will fight for the PRO Act, the right to organize, or supporting people wherever they are that they can organize, no matter where they are. I would love to reverse Janus ruling that's prevented, that's made some restrictions around organizing in public institutions. So definitely I am the face of the millennial organizers and union members. I'm very proud of it. And I feel it's important every day by saying how it's impacted my life and my works and all the benefits that we get by collectively bargaining.
Great, thank you. Doyle?
Thank you, Jaden. And I will share that in the worst days of the pandemic, I was working for the labor rights organization United for Respect, organizing workers at Amazon and at Walmart. And I was preparing one of those workers for a meeting with the incoming Biden White House labor advisor to discuss our priorities. Her name was Anne Marie Reinhardt Smith, and she was our voice in that meeting. She had spent 30 years working department store retail jobs. And as we prepared, I asked her, what is the most important thing you want to tell these White House folks? And she said, we need a $15 minimum wage. $7.25 is a starvation wage. We can't wait. And I share this story because those words haunt me and guide my campaign. About 8 weeks later, Anne Marie died of COVID-19. She was one of the millions of Americans who had to risk their lives in this pandemic for poverty wages, while companies like Amazon and Walmart made tens of billions in profits. That's why I'm on this fight and on your side. And we'll fight for the PRO Act, the Raise the Wage Act, and beyond. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Doyle. Andrew, and then Jake.
Thank you. As the son of school teachers and a former policy advisor in government, I've been a member of a union. I've benefited from unions, and I think that they're incredibly important if we want to rebuild the American middle class. I think one of the challenges is that the deck has been stacked against unions for decades. And as excited as I am about Starbucks and Amazon, the numbers are very clear. The continued diminishment of labor power in America is clear, even with this. And so how do we turn this renaissance into something truly extraordinary? I think we need to change the structure of the National Labor Relations Board. I think we need to increase fines for companies that crack down on labor organizing significantly. Right now, it's just the cost of doing business for these big corporations. And we really need to have fines that have teeth and have enforcement from an NLRB that really hurts. And then, of course, the last thing, I agree with Sammy and Doyle. I think we need to pass legislation that encourages and protects organizing in the workplace, not just at Starbucks and Amazon, but everywhere. So thank you.
Great. Jake?
Thank you. In economics, there's something called the Gini coefficient. It's the single most important index I've ever come across to measure how economically healthy an area is. It basically measures the wealth disparity between the 1% and the rest of us. The Gini coefficient right now, not just in our district, but in America, is at an all-time high. What it means in simple terms is that workers make so little compared to their CEO of their company that they work for. The only way to help move the Gini coefficient in the right direction is for labor to unionize and have their voices represented. We will do everything it takes to make sure workers see a clear economic ladder that they can climb to increase their quality of life.
Thank you, Jake. John, and then Tommy.
Thanks very much. I think most of us read the book, The Jungle. We know the absolute critical role of organizing to be able to make the workplace safe and compensated adequately and have benefits. We also maybe read, or I certainly did, Barbara Ehrenreich's book, Nickeled and Dimed. And echoing what Doyle said, the minimum wage is something that we as legislators are responsible for. Of course, I absolutely support unions and unionization and making it as straightforward and easy and legal as possible. But we also have to remember what we're going to do as legislators. And what we're going to do as legislators is make the minimum wage automatically increment with the cost of living. It's not acceptable to leave behind vast numbers of workers at McDonald's or wherever else that we have, the unions have not yet penetrated and probably won't penetrate for a generation. So we have to do our job in Congress, which is set the minimum wage at a livable wage.
Thank you. Tommy?
I think I'm just enjoying this thing from watching the interaction of people kind of doing this kind of thing, falling asleep. It's making me laugh. This is awesome. I love being here. You know, I've seen unions do good and I've seen unions do bad. You know, I think a worker's right to organize to get better wages is crucial to our democracy, but also I've seen that those same kind of unions run amok. So I think you have to have a healthy balance. You know, if it's good for the workers, then I'm all about it. If it's good for relationships to be built and get everybody get their little piece of the pie, so to speak, in order to move forward, that's great. Sometimes it's pro-union, sometimes it's not pro-union. So it's definitely a balance in how we approach things and how we get things done in this country. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Talk, Laura.
All right. Okay, 1 minute for the next question. And this will start off, go to Doyle. And that'll start with Doyle and then over to Andrew and Jake. So as tuition costs continue to skyrocket, making college less and less affordable, would you pledge to commit to eliminating student loan debt and working with colleagues to advance debt-free, tuition-free community college? And this
Yes.
goes to Doyle first. Oh,
Yes, absolutely. I support the cancellation of student loan debt and support free community college and four-year public college as other industrialized nations offer. I've been a strong advocate for student loan forgiveness and support efforts to urge President Biden to use his executive authority to cancel student loan debt now. I've been a beneficiary of the pause on student loan debt during the pandemic, as I carry almost 6 figures of debt myself and know how big of a difference that makes in my family's budget with the cost of groceries going up, the cost of transportation and of childcare. Thank you so much for asking this question. It's something you can count on me to fight for and support.
okay, thank you. And Andrew.
Thank you very much. I think there's an obvious problem here, and I mentioned at the outset that I had 6-figure student debt as well. I don't think that widespread debt cancellation is the right thing to do. Why? Because it has a disproportionate benefit to people like me who graduated with professional degrees and have the ability to pay them off. Instead, what we should be doing is focusing on tuition-free community college, on zeroing out interest on federally backed student loans, on providing loan repayment a system that's income-based so people can go into education or healthcare or other public service and not have to worry about their debt. We need to double or even triple Pell Grants at the federal level, more money in state opportunity grants like the Oregon Opportunity Grant, and grants for tribal students as well. And so we need each of those pieces to tackle an education affordability crisis that is really holding America back. We should be investing in students. We should be investing in people making themselves ready for the 21st century workforce. And that's what I'll do as a member of Congress. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. And Jake.
Thank you. I do not support eliminating the student loan debt. It is a terrible economic idea. We will make sure that tuition is competitive and can be paid back by the graduate, but there's no eliminating the student loan debt. And that is simply not the solution for anyone who's telling you that it is. However, community colleges being free is something I definitely do support. In this green city of the future, the way education runs can be revisited to make sure that any sort of tuition can be paid back by the graduate himself. But please don't believe any candidates that's letting you know that eliminating their debt is the answer. Right now, we have a national debt, for example, that's a debt to GDP ratio that is at the same levels that it was in pre-World War II, in the pre-World War II era. And that is a catastrophic economic index. It's why your dollar does not go as far as it used to right now. So please don't fall into that trap, whoever's listening to this.
Okay, thank you. And John.
Yeah, well, having been an educator in Oregon State University, a fairly affordable university, I've seen a lot of students suffering, even here, to pay their debts. And it is a point that the total student debt right now is $1.6 trillion. And that is, these are the types of numbers that really should give us pause. We do need to make provisions where these do not burden people to the point of incapacitation, but we also need to recognize that we are not, it's not logical to simply cancel that for everyone. That said, what we've seen at Oregon State University work so well is the 2 years of free community college that can lead into Oregon State. So the state of Oregon has that program. It's been incredibly effective. And so first, cutting off 2 years of the college tuition is a big deal. We also know that student numbers are dropping, and there's going to be more and more competition for universities to have students. And so we can work on actually creating incentives for lower price school.
Thank you. And Tommy?
Well, I joined the Navy and I got the GI Bill and the Navy College Fund and then the post 9/11 GI Bill. And I went through 2 years at Lane Community College, got my associate's degree, transferred to the University of Oregon to get my bachelor's, to still get out of college with about $11,000 in debt. And I'm one of the fortunate ones. We tell our kids as soon as they come out of the womb, you better get a college education. And then they're 22, 23 years old and they're hundreds and thousands of dollars in debt. That's just not fair. That's not the American dream. That's not what we want for our children. We need to make school and secondary school affordable, if not free. And that's what I support. Thank you.
Thank you. And Sammy?
Yeah, thank you. So yes, I pledge that we need to cancel student debt and make community college debt free. And before I lose you, if you don't think I should be pledging for that, I want to preface this primary. The expectation is that half of the voters are older than 65 years old. And I'm hoping that we can increase the voter base with younger voters. However, I want to speak to you. Those who are like me, I have 3 degrees, a disclosure, I don't have any student debt. But I believe we need to cancel student debt because it is an investment. And I will differ myself from my colleagues here, where I say it is an investment, just like during the recession in the beginning of this century, we found out that canceling the debt of the banks is a good idea. How about we cancel the debts of our students, who are the most important investments, the human capital? So please, that's why I'm endorsed by this university senate presidents and union leaders and educators and the students who we need them to vote and believe in the system, that we will invest in them. That's why I pledge to cancel student debt and make sure we have accountability for universities so the cost is low and we have debt-free community colleges. The economy will prosper if we do that. It's not just something as someone with economics background I have, but it is also something that is going on in other countries. They prosper. Thank you so much. I love it over time because I'm so passionate about this topic.
Okay, thank you, Sammy. And Jaden, it's over to you.
Thank you. So we're going to be starting this question with Andrew, followed by Jake, and I'm going to put in the chat. And so what's your evaluation on the US's dependence on Chinese manufacturing? And what action should our country take to remedy this situation? Andrew?
Thank you. I'm glad we asked a question about trade and about global economics. It's incredibly important for members of Congress to have experience and understanding of these issues. When it comes to our dependence on foreign manufacturing, I would say it's not just China. We get products from all over the world, of course. I would say that we need to do more to make sure that critical supply chains for national security and other critical needs can be built right here at home. We should be leveraging the Defense Production Act, for instance, to build heat pumps for climate. We should be leveraging the Defense Production Act to build COVID-related materials for vaccines and masks. But what we also need to do is have a real strong presence on the foreign stage when it comes to getting fair trade practices in place, because part of the problem is that China and other companies subsidize their own manufacturers. That weakens our ability to compete. And so I think we need better and stronger American presence in those foreign trade deals to make sure that it's a level playing field for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Jake?
The Chinese Communist Party, it can absolutely not be trusted right now. And in the same breath, I'm going to say that is not the Chinese people, it's the Chinese Communist Party. I say this as a person who was called the sand N-word after 9/11 28 times. So I want to say that in the same breath. The Chinese Communist Party is the wolf at the door that we've been warning about for decades now. And their GDP is now rising over the US's. We need to decrease our dependence on China. Donald Trump himself owns $200 million to the Bank of China, and you have these politicians who are in their hands. That government cannot be trusted with what they're doing internationally, with what they're doing in the Black Sea, in Africa, with Afghanistan right now. That government is set on overtaking the world in US dominance. They are now teaming up with the Kremlin to make sure that the US is being overthrown. We cannot have massive, massive economic ties with that government anymore. They are 0% to be trusted. People need to understand the level of how dangerous they are to the American future.
Thank you. John and then Tommy.
Yeah, what a complicated question. You know, a lot of us have struggled with that whole notion of free trade. When I worked in Sri Lanka, they were being paid less than $1 a day, and I saw the jobs in the States evaporate. I think what we have to have is fair trade. And so that means that we have to take into account the workers' conditions, benefits, wages, and environmental protections, and make our system of trade work within a fair system of trade. Clearly, we've learned in the pandemic that having critical infrastructure, critical technologies within our borders is very beneficial to our economy. And we're looking at the shortage of chips right now. Most companies are spending a third of their time developing circuits because they can't get the right chips. And my lab is doing that at the same time. But one thing to keep in mind is that interdependence brings stability. That is to say, when people depend on each other, they can't simply let go because their own future depends on it. And so we have to recognize that the interdependence needs to be there for global security.
Thank you. Tommy?
You know, the thing that we need to realize in this country is that we're no longer the manufacturing country that we once were. If we want to keep buying our cheap Walmart products, we'll just never get back to that point. But why can't we have our country's businesses and stuff who are over there on this side of the hemisphere? If they can't be in this country, be on this side, so that way, you know, other countries can benefit from having those kind of jobs to where maybe they don't want to travel the thousands and thousands of miles to our southern border. I think this is a huge issue that, you know, China, like some of the other candidates have says, has grown their sphere of influence, and they don't play by the same rules as we do. Yet we keep on spending trillions of dollars in their government every year. We could be spending that money in other parts of the world, helping other countries get their feet on the ground, and that way their citizens can have a decent life for themselves and quit, you know, and maybe not necessarily travel all the dangerous thousands of miles just to come here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Sammy and then Doyle.
Thank you. It is really scary, the dependence that we have right now. The supply chain bottlenecks and the dependency on a country that could really influence many aspects of our industry and life. We need to invest in American manufacturing, especially for critical parts, and we need to diversify our interdependence. We live in a globe where trade needs to happen, and it needs to happen with other nations as well, and we can't let China have the upper hand. We need to hold trade agreements that are fair for all, fair for the environment, fair for labor, fair for our national security interests, and fair for our hard workers here and the hard workers everywhere. So absolutely, I am really disturbed by it, and I would work with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to address it and make sure we are stable economically and in our national security.
Thank you, Sammy. Doyle?
Thank you, Jaden. I have been and always will be a strong advocate for fair trade, for environmental, labor, and human rights standards to be hardwired into multilateral trade agreements. I got my start as a young activist in the streets of Seattle, protesting the World Trade Organization in the now legendary coalition of the Teamsters and the Turtles. Workers' organizations, environmental organizations, and human rights advocates from the Global South coming together to say no to this race to the bottom that has been accelerated through these multilateral trade deals that have really been driven by transnational corporations at the table doing the bidding of the United States. And that's what we need to shift, is to have a fairer trade regime globally. I will say here in Oregon, we have a tremendous opportunity to develop offshore wind off the coast of Coos Bay. And there's not one bidder for the project now from the United States. All are from other countries, a stunning indictment of the lack of investment in clean energy manufacturing by the United States. I will change that when I serve you in Congress.
Thank you, Doyle. Over to Laura. Muted.
You're muted.
Laura, your turn to be muted this time.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay. Okay, so this, I believe, is going to be the last question, and it's going to go to Jake. Jake and Tommy, and then Sammy. 1 minute. And so Jake, what are your views on campaign finance reform?
Thank you. We're the only campaign that's not accepting anyone's money. It doesn't have to be big corporations, lobbyists, pharma, gas, or anything like that. We just don't want your money. We don't need it. With gas prices now $4 to $5 to $6, we'd rather you keep your $20 and to go tell your friends and family, your spouses, your kids, your parents about our campaign. Just go tell 20 people about it. That's the way democracy is supposed to be. It's supposed to be cheap so that people can get their voice out there. When I had registered, the Secretary of State said to get a campaign message out there would cost $2,500, and that's, offered by the state. And she said that if I had bought a private commercial, it's actually going to be more than that. But why is the state charging somebody $2,500 to get their message out there? If you're a single mom with 3 kids and you want to get your message out there, you now need to scrap together $2,500 in addition. I want money out of politics, and we're the only campaign actually doing that.
Okay, thank you. And Tommy?
Is John supposed to be speaking now?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry, John.
Oh, okay.
I'm just, I'm not one to take someone's turn. So
Sorry.
I was going to get, Tommy, thank you so much.
My
No,
apologies.
Sorry, we have a housekeeping issue.
it seems
Yeah.
like the timekeeping is a little bit of an issue as well, right? I can't see the
It's
clock.
it's a time, yes, the clock has just expired. We only had the clock
Okay.
for 2 hours.
I've
And
got-
we've gone over time, so we need to modify how we're handling the clock. And Vicky Bradley,
So
there.
I can time myself if you want me to. I mean, I can keep.
We have a backup timing method, John.
Okay.
So just hang on for a second.
Sure.
We're gonna spotlight you. And Vicky.
Lisa, can I suggest something? I see Vicky has papers where she can wave them, or if Vicky is comfortable holding her phone on the screen after starting the timer, would that be an acceptable solution for the organizers and the other candidates?
I think they have a plan, Sammy.
Yeah, we do have a plan,
Yeah.
Sandy. Vicky has signs and a timer. So Vicky, if you will give John the heads up for when he can start and then do the timekeeping.
Okay, and what it'd be, you'll get a 30-second note, a 10-second note, and a stop sign is what
Okay.
you'll see. So you can go ahead and start answering your question.
Yeah, campaign finance reform. Well, I mean, there's a whole bunch of aspects here. One of them is the dark money aspect, that right now anyone can set up a super PAC, and I think several of the candidates in this race have done that, where people can put in essentially unlimited, unregistered contributions, and it can be spent on your behalf. That's extraordinary and very dangerous and should be illegal. But then again, with the whole idea that corporations are people in terms of free speech, that's outrageous and needs to be completely lost. But the key piece here is that money is equal to access in this race. It's a tragedy, but to reach our district, it's a large district, we're going to differentiate between people by people who've already been sending out multi-page flyers versus those people who are trying to do it on the cheap and get their word out. This is a broken system, folks, and it's not fair, and it's not going to give a result which reflects truly the voters' interests. And so I'm really sorry that that's the case.
Okay, thank you, John. And now Tommy.
no worries. First of all, I haven't accepted any donations whatsoever, and frankly, I don't want to. I think also that I can win this race by just word of mouth and hard work. I don't want to owe anyone anything. when I get to Congress. As a freshman, I want to believe that I'm only going to be in office for one term because I want to fight and get as much done as possible in that term. If I happen to be voted in a second time, God willing, then awesome. But I'm going in there thinking I'm only going to have one term. So I hope not to have a single donation. I don't want to owe anyone anything. And I just want to work. I want to serve the people. And I think I think a lot of other candidates here feel kind of the same way. That's the feeling I've been getting. But we definitely, Citizen United has to be done with and we just need to do way more and get rid of money in politics. $2,500 is ridiculous. To get your word out there, it costs so much money. And I'm planning to change that. Thank you so much.
All right. Oh. And then Sammy, Doyle, and Andrew, starting with Sammy.
Vicky, may I ask if you could start the timer and actually put it on the screen for me, if that's okay? Yes, thank you. Whenever you're ready. Thank you. So I think this question is really important. It's the root cause of any reform we want to see in our political environment. We need to reverse Citizens United, and it will take constitutional amendment. I'm a believer of public finance, especially for local races, maybe matching like Portland have experimented. There are challenges we have, especially in this race, where corporations are having an upper hand and trying to really influence the election. Getting access to elected officials who they support. And I think that's morally wrong. The fact is you need to fundraise to reach people. The solution is to allow people to invest in campaigns rather than corporations. Dark money and Benedict expenditures, which is happening right now in our race, they will sway the election with their money unless we stand up. We stand up by talking to other people or investing in another campaign. That's why I say invest in my campaign.
Okay, thank you. And Doyle.
Yes, thank you. This is an area where I not only have a lot of passion, but have a lot of credibility. Our campaign is not accepting any funds from corporate PACs or lobbyists. And I'm a proud signatory of the No Fossil Fuel Money Pledge. There's a reason for that. And it's why I'm running, because the wealthy and well-connected have been allowed by the rules they helped to write to buy our elections for far too long. And that's why we don't see progress on our progressive priorities in Washington. That's why I'm in the fight. I will never take six-figure checks from billionaires. I'm proud to have the support of over 1,300 grassroots donors in my campaign for Congress. Thank you so much to all of my supporters who are giving $27, $50, $75 towards this campaign, because we believe that it's worth it to own a piece of a grassroots campaign and put people power behind a candidate who is on our side. So I believe we should, of course, repeal Citizens United. I support the For the People Act and also the Disclose Act, which are all currently stuck in the Senate, thanks to a few Democrats who are bought and paid for by big corporations.
Okay, and Andrew.
Thank you. I think everybody who's here today is really in alignment on this. I'm not taking corporate PAC money, nothing from fossil fuel industry or big pharma. The elephant is not in the room, and I'm not talking behind Val's back here because I've said it in the Register Guard already. Val Hoyle has built a career on corporations giving her campaign contributions from big pharma, from big oil, from big tobacco, you name it. And the question for everybody listening on this is, do you think that Philip Morris or Chevron is giving charitable contributions to political candidates? I think you know that the answer is no. They are making financial investments in political candidates, investments that they believe will pay dividends down the road. That's what companies do. And it erodes the fabric of democracy. It makes people cynical about who is representing them and about whether or not government can actually be responsive to their needs. Democrats in Oregon, you have a choice in the election. It is sitting there right before you. Please make a wise choice. Vote for somebody who has your back, not the back of the powerful. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And that was the last of the questions we had. To wrap up, we'll go with closing statements, and we're going to go reverse order, starting with Tommy. And Tommy, you have 2 minutes for closing statements.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me here today. Thank you for all the other candidates. I know I can hear your passion come through. Thank you for all those who turned in today to watch us answer our questions. Who am I and why should you vote for me? I'm a local kid. I love this place. I am a faith-driven person, which sometimes I'm kind of hesitant to tell people because how Christianity has been used as a weapon lately. And my walk is my walk, and I don't try to force that belief on other people, but I use my walk in order how to treat other people. And I follow the credence that you should love thy neighbor. And so I love everybody that's in our district, from the most conservative of us to the most liberal. We all need to be heard. I'm the person to listen to. I'm the person that can reach across the aisle and say, hey, let's talk. Last weekend, a few of us went down to the Douglas County Spring Fair and shook hands with people. I let people know that I'm a Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 hourly wage. I am not rich. I am fighting for you. A lot of people would walk by the booth and just give us a sneer because they saw a Democrat. And I made sure that I reached out my hand and said, I want to talk to you anyways, because that's how we're only going to make it going forward anymore, is if we go to the other side and we let them know that, hey, we're Americans too, and we want the same thing that you want. We want safety, we want security, we want justice when it demands it. And we want our families to be safe. We want equity in this country for everyone. I will fight for the minorities of our district. I will fight for the natives. I will fight for the vets. I will have the loudest voice out there. I thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me today, and God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you. And John.
Hi, yeah. This has been an amazing day. Thanks so much. How amazing is this? And thank you for your interest in this once in a 36-year opportunity. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I think there are maybe too many lawyers, career politicians in Congress. I think it's time for an earth scientist who actually solves problems as an engineer. There's a real danger that without a candidate who energizes the voters, we may lose the general election. I will speak for our community from experience across our district, rural and urban. My skill is finding real-world win-win solutions to complex problems. When elected, I'll be the only PhD earth scientist or engineer in either the Senate or the House. I will develop and passionately advocate for real solutions for climate change, advancing social justice, and saving the taxpayers' money. These are proud democratic values, but we need to make them real. We need to have informed, diverse, authoritative voices in Congress. Platitudes just won't cut it. In our districts, I have been an extension agent working with farmers on water management, working with cities on stormwater runoff, working with high-tech industry to advance environmental sensing and to improve crops while generating solar electricity. I became an internationally recognized scientist by publishing over 200 articles that solved riddles about how this planet works. But my passion is for making a difference in people's lives. I treasure the countless hours that I spent mentoring students, but it's time to bring a lifetime of experience to a place where progress has been all too slow. My ability to present cogent, deeply informed arguments will be part of a bright future for the 4th District, Oregon, and our country. Please follow Oregon's fabulous tradition of thinking differently. It's time for a real change, and I hope you'll look seriously at John Selker as your representative for the 4th District.
Thank you. And Jake.
Thank you. During your freshman orientation in Congress, after showing you to your office, they separate Republicans and Democrats, and they tell you one thing: whatever the other side proposes, we vote against it. And if in a year we propose the same legislation, we'll vote for it. This is the representation we're getting in Congress. It's why, despite everything we have all said today, nothing will get done, and Congress continues to have a 19% approval rating with no repercussions for it. The House tried to pass almost 200 bills in the last session, and all of them were shut down by the Senate with their filibuster light. We need to fix Congress first. Otherwise, none of what we said today will actually get done, and we'll just be kicking the can down the road. We need to stop congressmen from engaging in insider trading, including our own Speaker of the House, who made $200 million during coronavirus while we suffered. Most Republican congressmen have beaten the S&P 500 index. We need to peg our congressmen's salaries against the per capita of their respective district. That way, whatever the average constituent in their district is feeling, they will feel. It's the servant leadership that our founding fathers imagined. I will only accept what the per capita is in our district and use the rest of the money to free those 4 children in Afghanistan. Not only will it save an entire family who are in hiding, but it'll put us back on the political map and show the US how much a freshman congressman can do. And that's the clout we need to make a difference. And with that clout, we're going to pass the Fairness Doctrine, which would promote unbiased news. The Fairness Doctrine, which we used to have, which was repealed by Reagan, needs to be reinstated, which would force journalists to report unbiased news and give us the power to sue sensational news stories. We're going to dismantle the Republican Party, who says that their only goal is to stand in our way. Even the Lincoln Project, a Republican group, now says that their party is treasonous. We're going to build a green city of the future right here in our district, which is an investment opportunity which will pay our district and give us the best chance to solving our problems. This city of the future that we want to make is not another government spending bill. It's an investment opportunity. So I don't trust our federal government to spend on anything. And it does what NASA did when it's trying to get to space. It waves a budget to the best private company suited for the job. Oregonians, whether they live in it or not, will be making money off it. There's massive precedence for all of this, and details are available at my website, whynotoregon.com. And that's the question I implore you right now, whether you vote for us or not. It's why not us? Why not Oregon? When we realize our fullest potential, we have so much more we can accomplish, but somehow we're letting Congress tell us this is all we can do.
Okay, thank you, Jake. And Andrew.
Thank you to the county parties. Thank you to the state party for putting on this forum today. And thank you again to my fellow candidates and those of you tuning in this once in a generation election. There are clear choices to be made, and I know you'll make them wisely. I was in Florence the other day knocking doors, and one person invited me into her house. Her name was Mary, and she told me a little bit about some of her concerns about her community, some of her hopes for the future. And then she did something that very few people do at the door. She said, can I cut a check to your campaign? I said, sure. And then she said something else. She said, can I pray with you? And I thought, great, I could use that. Any of us could. And so we held hands together, bowed our heads, and she gave a prayer, not only for me and my family, which was deeply appreciated at this moment, but for the community and for the country that we love. And it was a reminder to me about why I'm doing this in the first place, that for all of the vitriol and the poisonous rhetoric in politics today, for all the distrust and division in DC, the truth is when you talk to working class Americans in their homes and their businesses, what you realize is that people have hope, people have humility, people believe that America can be better than it is today. And I think that's incredibly important for us to recognize. And I'm running for Congress to try to do my part to make that a reality, to bring a new generation of leadership to DC that recognizes the need to act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly in the direction of a better America. I am not the establishment favorite in this race. I am not the party insider. I am a son and a spouse. I'm a father and a friend. I am a citizen committed to putting people first today and every day. My hero is John Lewis. He's right behind me, a picture behind me. And he talked all the time about building that beloved community, about forgiving those with whom you disagree, forgiving those who have even committed violence against your body, as they had against John's on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. It's that beloved community that we need in America, and I'm proud to be part of bringing it. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you. And Doyle.
Thank you so much to the Democratic Party of Oregon Congressional District 4, co-chairs and committee members, and everyone who put this together and spent your Sunday considering who will serve as our next member of Congress. When it comes to the climate crisis, healthcare, workers' rights, housing, I've spent 2 decades shaping the progressive political strategy to move these priorities forward in Congress. I've never been under any illusions that achieving real change would be easy, or that entrenched interests in Washington would give up without a fight. So first, we have to ensure that our district stays safe in Democratic hands, with the redistricting favoring our party, our unaffiliated voters in the 4th Congressional District being mostly under 45. The strongest Democrat is the one who can motivate young people and energize the progressive Democratic base in an off-year election. My campaign is the first in this race with a volunteer-powered field program, knocking doors, calling voters, texting thousands of Oregonians. We will have a strong grassroots presence on the ground in every precinct to ensure our path to victory. And that's why we have the support of the Progressive Democrats of America, the Progressive Change Campaign Committee, former Secretary of State Bill Bradbury, progressive organizations in every county, the College Democrats at both UO and OSU, who will bring the enthusiasm and the people power we need to win in May and in November. With your support, I will serve as your member of Congress with the same urgency and commitment that I have brought to my career as a community organizer, progressive strategist, and attorney. There will never be any question about why I'm in Congress, whose side I'm on. It's yours, it's ours. This is about Oregon's future. I'm here today to ask for your support on May 17th and on November 7th. Oregon can't wait. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And finally, Sammy.
Laura, thank you. I'm ready to build solutions that works for everybody. The role of congressperson is to think ahead and respond to the communities and district needs. That includes everyone in our communities, folks living in rural areas, those along the coast, and constituents living in bigger towns like Eugene and Corvallis. We have to respond to our community's needs by getting out there and talking with people, holding town halls, setting up virtual Zoom calls, and listening to what people are saying. Now, while I cannot compromise on my values, I know that the only way to get things done in Washington, D.C. is through collaboration. And sometimes we have to compromise on solutions, but never compromise on our values. I'm your guy to do that thing. Peter DeFazio has laid the foundations, but the work is not finished yet. I'm ready to get to work. I'm listening to our constituents, working with them to define the problem. And once I'm in Washington, D.C., I'll work across the aisle to build the solutions. I'm an engineer by trade, and I understand that solutions must be built, and sound solutions cannot be built by a single person. I'm ready to work with others in Congress to bring home solutions that meet the needs of our districts. Like I mentioned earlier today, I have a background in building solutions, running a business, and developing policy and budgets. But what we will really need, and what will help me carry your voice to Washington, D.C. and Congress, is my integrity, my ability to listen, my compassion, and how much I care about this place we call home. Vote for me, not because of the diversity of background, experiences, and skills I bring forward. I'm sorry, vote for me, not despite of the diversity I bring, but because of it. Thank you very much. My name is Sami Al-Abdrabbo. Please donate at SamiForCongress.com.
Thank you, Sammy. And this pretty much closes the 4th Congressional Candidate Forum. And before I do my closing remarks, Jaden, did you have anything you would like to add? I'd like to thank you for being co-moderator.
Yeah, it's been a great opportunity. I thank you to all the candidates. It's going to be hard to choose. I kind of hope one day that we adopt a alternative voting method so we can vote for multiple people and not just one. But until that day, I'm going to have to comb over all these statements and think about it. Thank you all so much for attending as well, and have a good rest of your day.
Okay, and I'd just like to thank the candidates for spending time with us today, and also everybody who attended to watch the, to listen to the candidates. Each of the candidates does bring something unique to the conversation. Also, I would like to urge all of the attendees to volunteer some of their time this year on helping Democrats win in November, be it on a congressional race, a statewide race, or a more local race closer to home. It's very important to be involved in order to make sure we get our candidates in. And with that, thank you for attending again on this Sunday afternoon. And I hope everybody has a good day and manages to stay dry tonight. For I hear it's rain.
Thanks, Laura.
Okay, so thank you.
Have a good day. Take care. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Take care,
you
everybody.
So much.
Thanks a lot.
Laura, Jaden, and Vicky, I just want to take a moment to say you did phenomenal work. Thank you. Thank you, Vicky, for the flexibility and really appreciate how you organized this work. It's been really phenomenal and I appreciate it.
Thank you all. Good to see you. Hope to see you again soon.
Yeah.
Take care.
Thanks a lot. Thanks
Bye-bye.
very much. Bye.
Okay, Lisa. Okay, are we done?
We're done.
Okay, we can stop recording.